There's a line to a quarry at the end of Thomas's branch. It goes for some distance along the road. Thomas was always very careful to whistle here in case anyone was coming. Early one morning, a large policeman was sitting close to the line. Thomas liked policemen. He had been a great friend of the constable who had just retired. Peep, peep, he whistled, "Good morning." Thomas expected that the new constable would be friendly too, but was sorry to see that he didn't look friendly at all. He was red in the face and very cross. "Disgraceful," he spluttered. "I didn't sleep a wink last night. It was so quiet, and now engines come whistling suddenly behind me." "I'm sorry, sir," said Thomas. "I only said good morning." A policeman pointed to Thomas. "Where's your cowcatcher?" he asked. "But I don't catch cows, sir." "Don't be funny," snapped the policeman. He looked at Thomas's wheels. No side plates either, and he wrote in his notebook, "Engines going on public roads must have their wheels covered and a cowcatcher in front to protect people and animals from being dragged under the wheels if they stray onto the line. You haven't, so you are dangerous." "Rubbish," said Thomas's driver. "We've been along here hundreds of times and never had an accident." "That makes it worse," the policeman answered. He wrote "regular lawbreaker" in his book. Thomas puffed sadly away. The fat controller was having breakfast. He was eating toast and marmalade. The butler came in. "Excuse me, sir, you are wanted on the telephone." "Bother that telephone," said the fat controller. "I'm sorry, my dear," he said to his wife. "Thomas is in trouble with the police, and I must go at once." At the station, Thomas's driver told the fat controller what had happened. Dangerous to the public, indeed. We'll see about that. The fat controller spoke to the policeman. But however much he argued with him, it was no good. "The law is the law," he said, "and we can't change it." The fat controller felt exhausted. "I'm sorry, driver," he said. "It's no use arguing with policemen. We will have to make those cowcatcher things for Thomas, I suppose." "Everyone will laugh, sir," said Thomas. "They'll say I look like a tram." The fat controller stirred. Then he laughed. "Well done, Thomas. Why didn't I think of it before? We want a tram engine. When I was on my holiday, I met a nice little engine called Toby. He takes trucks from the farms, but the lorries are taking over most of his work and he needs a change. He has cowcatchers and side plates. I'll write to his controller at once." A few days later, Toby arrived. "That's a good engine," said the fat controller. "I see you've brought your coach, Henrietta." "You don't mind, do you, sir?" asked Toby. "The station master wanted to use her as a hen house, and that would never do." "No, indeed," said the fat controller. "We couldn't allow that." Toby made the silly trucks behave even better than Thomas did.
Oi, you!
At first, Thomas was jealous, but he was so pleased when Toby rang his bell and frightened the policeman. They've been firm friends ever since. Thomas the Tank Engine has worked his branch line for many years and knows it very well. You know just where to stop, Thomas, laughed his driver. You could almost manage it without me. Thomas had become conceited. He didn't realize his driver was joking. Later, he boasted to the others. Driver says I don't need him now. Don't be so daft, snorted Percy. I'd never go without my driver, said Toby earnestly. I'd be frightened. Huh, boasted Thomas. I'm not scared. You'd never dare. I would then. You'll see. The next morning, the firelighter came. Thomas drowsed comfortably as the warmth spread through his boiler. Percy and Toby were still asleep. Thomas suddenly remembered. Silly stick in the muds, he chuckled. I'll show them. Driver said I could manage without him. I'll just go out. Then I'll stop and wheesh. That'll make them jump. Thomas thought he was being clever. Really, he was only moving because a careless cleaner had meddled with his controls. He soon found his mistake. He tried to wheesh, but he couldn't. He tried to stop, but he couldn't. He just kept rolling along. He didn't dare look at what was coming next. There was the station master's house. The station master was about to have breakfast. Horrors! Cried Thomas, and shut his eyes. The house rocked. Broken glass tinkled. Plaster was everywhere. Thomas had collected a bush on his travels. He peered into the room through its leaves. He couldn't speak. The station master was furious. His wife picked up her plate. You miserable engine, she scolded. Just look what you've done to our breakfast. Now I shall have to cook some more. She banged the door. More plaster fell. This time it fell on Thomas. Thomas felt depressed. Workmen propped up the house with strong poles and laid rails through the garden. Meanwhile, Donald and Douglas arrived. Dinna fash yourself, Thomas. We'll soon have you back on the rails, they laughed. Donald and Douglas, puffing hard, managed to haul Thomas back to safety. Bits of fencing, the bush, and a broken window frame festooned his front, which was badly twisted. The twins laughed and left him. Thomas was in disgrace. There was worse to come. You are a very naughty engine. I know, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Thomas's voice was muffled behind his bush. You must go to the works and have your front mended. It will be a long job. Yes, sir. Meanwhile, a diesel rail car will do your work. The diesel, sir? Thomas spluttered. Yes, Thomas. Diesels always stay in their sheds till they are wanted. Diesels never gallivant off to breakfast in station masters' houses. It was a beautiful morning on the island of Sodor. Thomas the Tank Engine's blue paint sparkled in the sunshine as he puffed happily along the branch line with his coaches, Annie and Clarabel. Thomas made good time and soon arrived at the station where Toby and Percy were waiting at the platform. He was feeling very pleased with himself. Hello, Thomas, whistled Percy. You look splendid. Yes, indeed, boasted Thomas. Blue is the only proper colour for an engine. Oh, I don't know. I like my brown paint, said Toby. I've always been green. I wouldn't want to be any other colour either, added Percy. Well, anyway, huffed Thomas, blue is the only colour for a really useful engine. Everyone knows that. Percy said no more. He just grinned at Toby. They knew only too well that sometimes Thomas could be a little too cheeky for his own good. Later, Thomas was resting in a siding when Percy arrived in the yard. Percy pulled his trucks to a large hopper to load them with coal. Thomas was still being cheeky. "Careful, Percy," he warned. "Watch out with those silly trucks." Go on," muttered the trucks as Percy pulled each one under the hopper. "And by the way," Thomas went on, "those buffers don't look very safe to me." But he got no further. With a tremendous bump, the last truck passed the hopper much too fast. The coal poured down all over Thomas. "Help, I'm choking!" cried Thomas. "Get me out!" Percy was worried, but he couldn't help laughing. Thomas's smart blue paint was covered in coal dust from smokebox to bunker. "Ha ha!" chuckled Percy. "You don't look really useful now, Thomas. You look really disgraceful." "I'm not disgraceful," choked Thomas. "You did that on purpose. Get me out!" It took the men so long to clean Thomas that he wasn't in time for his next train. Toby had to take Annie and Clarabel instead. "Poor Thomas," whispered Annie and Clarabel. They were most upset. Thomas was upset too. He was very grumpy in the shed that night. Toby thought it a great joke, but Percy was cross with Thomas for thinking that he had made Thomas's paint dirty on purpose. Fancy a really useful blue engine like Thomas becoming a disgrace to the Fat Controller's Railway, said Percy. "I wouldn't have missed all that fun for anything," he chuckled. Thomas was at the platform the next day when Percy brought his trucks in from the junction. The trucks were heavy. "I feel so tired," Percy puffed as he pulled into the station. "Have a drink," said his driver, "then you'll feel better." The water column stood at the end of the siding with the unsafe buffers. The props underneath the buffers were old and needed mending. Percy moved forward and found that he couldn't stop. The buffers didn't stop him either. "Woo!" wailed Percy. "Help!" The buffers were broken and Percy was wheel-deep in coal. It was time for Thomas to leave. He had seen everything. "Now Percy has learned his lesson too," he chuckled to himself. That night, the two engines made up their quarrel. "I didn't cause your accident on purpose, Thomas," whispered Percy. "You do know that, don't you?" "Of course," replied Thomas, "and I'm sorry I was cheeky. Your green paint looks splendid again, too. In future, we'll both be more careful of coal," said Thomas wisely. Thomas the tank engine was ill. Workmen had tried to make him better, but it was no use. "Edward must take you to the works," said the Fat Controller. Thomas felt very miserable. Then the Fat Controller spoke to Duck. "I want you to help Percy and Toby while Thomas is away." Duck was delighted. He already knew Percy and soon made friends with Toby and Bertie. Terence the tractor gave him a big welcome too. "Take care of Thomas's coaches," he advised. "He's sure to miss them while he's away." Duck was very gentle with the coaches. Annie and Clarabel were impressed. Such nice manners, they told each other. It really is a pleasure to go out with him. When Thomas came back, Annie and Clarabel told him how well Duck had managed. Thomas was so pleased to be home that he soon forgot to be jealous. The works had left Thomas's handbrake very stiff. It made his brakes seem as if they were hard on, when in fact they were not. As a result, he and his coaches often overran the platform. Thomas found this most embarrassing. Gradually, his driver and fireman learned to be extra careful. But one day, Thomas's fireman was ill, and a relief man took his place. The fireman had fastened the coupling and joined the driver and station master on the platform to wait for Henry's passengers. The fireman had forgotten all about Thomas's handbrake. Thomas simmered happily. Not long now, he thought, as he saw Henry slowly approaching. But Thomas's brakes were not hard on, and suddenly he felt his wheels begin to move. He tried to stop, but he couldn't without his driver and fireman. He tried to whistle a warning, but he couldn't do that either. The guard, driver, fireman, and passengers were all stranded on the platform. "Stop! Stop!" shrieked Annie and Clarabel. Thomas, with plenty of steam, kept on going. The alarm went out down the line. "Stop the runaway!" There, ready for action, was Harold the helicopter. The inspector had made a plan, and together they took off into the sky. At last, Thomas was tiring. "I need to stop. I need to stop," he panted wearily. As they neared the next station, Thomas saw Harold land. They entered the platform slowly enough for the inspector to act. Judging his moment, the inspector scrambled into the cab and screwed the brake hard on. At last, Thomas stopped. Both he and the inspector were very relieved. Then they thanked Harold. "Think nothing of it." "Well, Harold, glad to be of service any time." "Phew," remarked the inspector. "We must never let this happen again, Thomas." Wearily, Thomas agreed with him.